Car loans are a great way to speed up the ownership process to the car that you want to have. However, it can also be a double-edged sword. If you don't use it correctly, it can cause you quite a lot of harm, either immediately or long-term onto your financials as well. So in this video, I want to share my 5 golden rules that I use to make sure that I minimize my risk, manage my risk as I'm taking a hire purchase or loaning cars. And hopefully that will give you some inspiration to have you plan your finances to get the car of your dreams, okay? Now, 2 disclaimers before I start. Number 1, I'm not a financial planner, not a professional one. If you need one, please seek one that's professional. I'm merely sharing what I would do for myself, and hopefully it helps you, think outside the box, all right? And the other disclaimer is this. Look, if a car for you, all it is just a transportation. Point A, point B, has to be reliable, and that's it. Then, a lot of the things that I share in this video may not be relevant for you. Like, for me, my rule is, one, I'm going to give you one ahead of time. I take 20% of my income and I put into a car loan. Well, for some people, they don't enjoy cars and they just need a car to get around safe enough. That's a little bit too much. So, take everything with a little bit of, for yourself, tailor it for yourself. So the content is still relevant. It may open up new avenues for you. But take in mind that this design is how a car enthusiast like myself would think of how to use a car loan to own the cars of my dreams, all right? So with that, let's jump right in. Okay, number 1 is interest rates, understanding how it works, okay? Now this one is something that may seem obvious. It may seem like, well, Thomas, I understand what you're talking about, but for some people, it actually is, misunderstood. Okay, especially in Malaysia, hire purchase agreements is how we work in Malaysia. So in different countries, maybe a little bit different. So I'm going to speak specifically for our Malaysian friends, okay? So, but in your countries, check out how it works, right? In Malaysia, we have this process called hire purchase. And let's say if you loan 100,000 ringgit for the car, and they offer you interest rate, say at 2.5%. Sounds pretty low, right? Like it's lower than housing, lower than personal loans and stuff. But the actual interest rate is actually pretty high because the calculation is not as you think. It's not 2.5% every single year. Let me explain why, right? So at this 2.5%, the cost of financing, okay, is actually 2,500 ringgit per year, right? Because 2.5%, 100,000 ringgit. So you're paying this as a cost of financing every year. Your monthly repayment or your yearly repayment consists of paying off some of the money here and paying off some of the money over here. Now, let's take for example, let's say you are taking a 9 years loan, because it's a really long loan, right? Let's take a 9 years loan, which most people do, 9 years loan. Because you always get, sometimes the dealers say, go for longer, better. Well, there's no good or bad in it, but understand, here's what's going to happen, right? 9 years loan, let's do some mathematics, okay? So if you divide 100,000 ringgit by 9 years, that's roughly around 11,111, right? 0.11 per year, right? This is how much you pay per year, okay? Plus this one over here. But after you paid the first year, it's going to be a balance of 88,000, 888.88, right? So now it's not going to look like that, but you get the idea. This is the first year after you paid off, okay? And then as you go further and further down, and let's just say that you are paying your 5th year already, okay? Your 5th year, so 11,000, 1 times 5 minus 1,000, you will have a balance of 44,000 ringgit, okay? Here's the thing. Most people think that you'll be paying 2.5% interest on your balance. But no, you're paying 2.5% interest on the initial loan amount. So which means every single year, you're paying 2,005, 2,005, 2,005, 2,005, all right? So check this out. Let's say after the 5th year, okay, this one over here, the 6th year, you're not actually paying 2.5% because, right, you are loaning this balance amount, but your interest rate is this much. So the real interest rate, you got to think, I'm still borrowing this much, but I'm paying this much as the cost. So if I go 2005, divide by 4445, right? 44445 is actually now, look at that. Look at that. 5%. 5%. 5.6% interest. Because you're effectively still borrowing this amount, but you're still paying the interest based on that. Right? And as every year passes, it goes, this one goes higher because your principal reduced, but your interest never changed. Something to think about. As you progress further into the loan, you're going to be paying a more higher effective interest rate towards the amount of money you own. So how do you deal with this? Well, it's not to say, avoid 9-year loans. Well, you can still do 9 years loan, but maybe consider this aspect. Maybe you want to settle a little bit earlier, or maybe use another way of financing that could settle which is lower than this. Because when you reach the 7-8 year, sometimes you might even see as high as 8% or something like that. You get the means, right? So I want to be very careful of that. So when I'm taking a loan, I'm always thinking, okay, how long am I owning the car? Am I willing to pay this kind of percentage to this? Or if I don't really mind, I don't mind the 2,500 ringgit, it's just the cost of financing, I'll let it be. But just keep that in mind, as you are loaning a car. Don't just look at the monthly repayment, look at the big picture. The second golden rule I always have is to always just use anywhere between 20% to max. Now this is a really aggressive rule. 30% of your income onto your car expenses plus financing. Okay? Now, the key word, car expense and financing. That's when you got to include road tax, insurance, potential maintenance and stuff. Now that number can vary depending on the car that you have and depending on how much you want to spend on your car. So for example, I give my car a little bit more leeway because I like to keep my tires fresh and I do burn my tire a little bit more. So of course I give myself a higher budget. But anyways, 20% to 30%. Here's the reason why. Cars, most of them are depreciating asset, right? Even if they're appreciating or they don't depreciate whatsoever, as a car guy, here's our logic. We want to always keep this as our source of joy and fun and our toys and stuff like that, right? So the way I see it, the money I put here is never going to really come back to me, right? Even if I come back, I'm going to spend it back onto a car, right? 20% will have an impact on your lifestyle, but it's not that tremendously huge, right? 30% you're really pushing it. However, again, we must think of the big picture, not to be so myopic and just say, well, I can afford this car and I can pay from my salary 2,000 or pay for my profits for my business 20%, 30%. Must think of the big picture, right? Think of it like this. Okay, it's like a balance. Our car expense is something you spend, right? Expense, right? That's the word for it, right? Expenses. Nothing wrong with it. Just understand that it's out, right? And the more expense we have, right, we are not really increasing our net worth, not increasing our value, right? So imagine if I keep spending on cars, 20%, my net worth is not going anywhere. So what I would recommend people to do, or recommend myself, I would do it myself, is I need to make sure I balance it out with some sort of investments, right? Something that appreciates to counter the loss or the liability, right? So let's say I lose 20,000 a year, but if I invest 20,000 a year, this one will compound. Every single year will compound. Even at there's so many investment tools out there, right? But what I learned from my coach was BRP. Some of you may know this gentleman, his name is Jivan Sahadevan, and he says you always need to put money aside for investments, which is profit-making vehicles. Business, real estate, or paper assets, right? Can it be mutual funds and stuff? That's not up to me to figure out, but just have a think about it. Oops. Okay, have a think about it. Loss, right, of depreciation, you need to counter with some sort of appreciation. At the least, we want to make sure that we are balanced. Because what a lot of people end up happening is that they keep getting stuck with a certain band of cars they can own, right? If you do this is for the long run. Enjoy something you can and prepare yourself for the long run, okay? So this is why I took the 20%, 30% rule, okay? But also means you only have roughly around 60% left for your rent and everything else. So again, if you're not a car guy and car is just a transport, maybe you don't want to push this too much, okay? Point number 3, this is very important. You got to plan on how to discard your car, or how would it impact you if you actually need to let the car go. This is something so important, and it's even more important than, oh, what's the second-hand value of the car? Rather, we want to think for ourselves first. If I have to let go of the car, what are the financial ramifications? Okay? So, imagine this. You own a car and you took a loan that's, let's say, 100,000 ringgit. And then this is your loan repayment. And after 2 years of loan repayment, let's say you still have 80,000 ringgit left on your loan. However, the car's value in the market value is actually lower than your loan. Let's say it's 75,000. Not a big gap, but 75,000. So here's what happens. When you sell the car, you got to settle your loan. So you got to get a buyer to pay you 7,500, and you got to top up another 5,000 ringgit just to make the sale of the car, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with this, okay? It's just planning. Now, if you really like this car and you know this might be the potential thing that might show up, then you got to get this money and put aside. So in case when you have to sell, you're ready to sell. Now, selling cars as well incurs other costs. There's puspacom, there's inspection, there is transfer, there's commissions for your sales agent. So you want to make sure that you keep that in mind as well. All these additional costs, right, that might show up when you're selling the car. So there are many ways to look at this. For me, the easiest and the lowest level look at this, the simplest way is this. When I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to try to predict what is the upcoming future value of the car after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years, right? Let's say I'm going to own the car for 5 years. I want to just check every single year, what is my approximate guess value, right? Now, there's no such thing as an accurate value. So some people, they go, ask Thomas, what do you think the value of this car after few years? There's no real value in that, right? There's no accurate way of guessing that. But what we can do is use historical data. So you can go onto Muda, go onto CarList, and just take a look. How is the depreciation curve for that specific model you're looking for? For example, you're looking for a BMW 3 Series, right? F30 330i. How does it look like every single year? Right? It gives you some idea. How about the G20, for example? How about the last model, E90? How did it depreciate over the years? Try to get a sense of how much the depreciation is. And how I want to plan my loan is that every time if I had to settle my loan, right? You can use a calculator. I'll put a link in the description below. A calculator to determine what is the settlement amount. And I'm going to go year by year, right? So, year 1, settlement is, let's say, 80,000, right? Year 2, settlement is 70,000. Year 3, settlement is 60,000, right? For example, this is a rough idea, right? This is the settlement amount, and this is the car value. Let's say the car value is 85, right? 75, and then 70. Now this is looking pretty safe. You see that? I know some of you don't intend to sell the car, but again, this is something as a risk management factor. If you need to sell in any case, you know when you sell it, you don't have to cough up even more money to sell it. All right? This one catch a lot of people off guard, and sometimes some of them, they'll just keep owning the car because they don't want to lose money. On the flip side, if you know this, you might avoid being in this situation, okay? Or on the flip side, you can plan for it. You know it's going to be below my settlement amount. I'm going to put some money on the side just for that when that happens, okay? Now, I'll not dive deeper into this, but I hope this gives you an idea on why is it so important to exit a loan and plan for the exit as a form of risk management, okay? Now, this leads to my 4th point. This is really simple. The 4th point is to have a 3 months buffer. Now, why is it so important? See, when you're going to sell your car, when you don't have a buffer, sometimes you get desperate. You're like, oh, I need to sell my car quickly. The first guy gives you an offer and then you take it and go. A car dealer comes and slam you and say, okay, I'm going to buy your car at this price. Not a good price and you don't feel like selling it, right? But you have to sell it. Then boom, your car value that was higher, suddenly you have to incur additional costs just to let go of the car. But if you have 3 months buffer, for example, you can wait for the right offer to come. You feel comfortable to wait for the right offer to come. And some people might do this, and this is what usually I would do. I don't usually trade in my car. although it's convenient, but for certain car segments, I won't go in details, it's better to put it on consignments, right? Meaning to say, you still own the car while the car dealer tries to find you a buyer, right? Because when they trade in, they essentially buy your car and they're going to ask for a way below market value car because that's how a car dealer works. They need the margin to run the shop, right? But if you do a consignment, they don't have to purchase your car. So they don't mind taking a smaller cut when they sell your car. So the 3 months buffer gives you options. Basically, it's just that. And plus, having the 3 months buffer means that in case something goes wrong with your life or something like that, you have the money to pay the car so they don't take your car away, right? And then last but not least, this is my personal rule, okay? If I'm going to go for a car that I consider a little bit on the higher side for repayments, let's say it's 5,000 ringgit a month or 6,000 ringgit a month, maybe 10,000 ringgit a month. Now the financing cost can rack up a lot really, really quickly. Maybe talking about maybe it's like 7,000 ringgit per year, 10,000 ringgit interest payment per year. There's going to be a lot of costs incurred, okay? What I want to do is to make sure that those kind of loans that I'm taking is to be paid through a passive sort of income. In fact, I want to encourage all of us to really consider this as car guys, is to really work hard not just to pay for your car loans, but to really work hard to build an investment portfolio or to build a business so the income comes on a scalable and a passive way, and that pays for our car. That's a true form of luxury because you're no longer working to get a car. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way, working to get a car. I think that's noble. I think that's really someone who would chase after a dream. I really respect that. But of course, if you have a passive source of income to support you to pay that, even if it's partial, even if it's 20%, 30%, or 50%, it's going to lessen your burden, especially when it's a really expensive car. We're talking about a 5,000 repayment or 6,000 repayment per month, right? So just have that in mind. And that's just how I look at my car ownership journey, right? Because after all, I want to enjoy my cars and I don't want to stress out too much about my car. So I don't just work hard to pay for my car. I build business, the business pays me income on a passive level, and I take that and I pay my car. Or I have an investment portfolio that gives me passive income, and then there, I pay for my car. Now, these are the 5 rules that I use for myself when I'm deciding to take loans on the car. Again, this is not intended to be financial advice, but I hope this gives you a better idea, some framework, maybe a blueprint for you to start exploring on your next move, all right? With that, if you enjoyed this video, please help me hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and leave me some comments below on what you think about my 5 rules. Let me know as well in the comments below what else would you like to hear around car ownership. I'll be more than happy to create content like this because end of the day, all these contents I'm creating, I just want to support my car community to enjoy the car that they love. Alright? With that, see you another time. Love you guys and keep it 100.